Okay. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Sea Pines Community Services Associates Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. The board convened briefly starting at 9:30, and just prior to going into executive session, I'm pleased to announce that the commercial members of the board ratified their approval to fill the open seat on the commercial Class B group with Mr. Bob Gossett. And so I want to welcome Bob back to the board. Bob is a longtime Sea Pines owner, property owner, and business owner owns the Salty Dog and the various properties down at the south end. He was on the board for many years, left the board for a while, and we are thrilled to have him, his expertise and his knowledge of the community back. He's been a terrific supporter of the Forest Preserve, various entities. So Bob, welcome aboard, and we are thrilled to have you back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good. Thank you very much. We did meet in executive session briefly, and we are now in open session. Mr. Corbett, could you confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Before we get into the business of the meeting, I want to remind those who are watching the meeting right now that you can still submit questions to the board to be answered at the end of our, after we adjourn, at questions@csaseapines.com. We are happy to answer any questions you may have at the end of the meeting. I next want to move to ratify the approval of the Sea Pines CSA Board of Directors meeting minutes of September 27, 2022. These have been circulated. Are there any comments or questions on those board minutes? Seeing none, I'll move for approval. Is there a second? Mr. Thompson, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposition? Those are approved. Thank you all. The next are my chair remarks. I'm going to defer most of my remarks to the end of the meeting. I did just want to note, as I had indicated in my letter yesterday, that today is the last meeting for Mr. Borghese as serving as our treasurer. David Borghese served as treasurer for many years and then took a year off and then came back to the board and has served, done a tremendous job as the treasurer and chair of the finance committee for the last 3 years, at a time when, as we all know, we were working on a variety of different revenue streams and finding ways to make sure that we kept our capital budget appropriate and met our operating needs. So I want to thank David for his service and wish him well in the future. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll next then, I'll defer my remarks to the end of the meeting. Mr. Bennett, your president's remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have most of my remarks will occur during the later in the agenda, but I too want to thank Dave Borghese personally for the last 3 years. His patience and instruction with me and me has been tremendous. He has been a blessing to me both professionally and personally as it relates to this organization and coming into Sea Pines, and I am eternally grateful for that. And I look forward to continuing to be his friend as the years go by. And Dave, thank you so much, and I appreciate everything you've done.
It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
And I'll save other remarks for later, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions then? Seeing none, we'll move on to the director reports. We'll start with Russell Fredericks, Capital Projects and Community Development. Welcome, Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I just wanted to provide a brief update this morning to the community about our ongoing capital work. Firstly, I want to thank the residents for their patience and understanding as we work through these complex projects, particularly North Sea Pines Drive. Our crews will be out there this week making some necessary repairs on recently completed paving operations. So you'll see that going on over the next couple of days. We also have in the queue the resurfacing of Red Cardinal Road. The drainage was recently completed. I could certainly to attest that the drainage on Red Cardinal Road was failed at every pipe seam along the way. Root intrusion was extensive in certain areas of the drainage of that roadway. So glad to complete that project here in the near term. We have begun work on Snowy Egret Road. off of Sea Pines Drive. Similar to Red Cardinal, the drainage has failed in multiple areas on that roadway. Our contractor is mobilized down there for the last couple of weeks and projecting to complete the drainage work here in mid-December. From there, where that will embark on the resurfacing or repaving of that roadway. Also in the queue, we have Wagon Road from Sea Pines Drive to Old Military. And there's a couple of small spurs off of Wagon Road that we'll be tackling. But again, the drainage in multiple areas has failed. So we're tackling that along with the roadway resurfacing. So again, I'll be asking for cooperation and patience as we work through those upcoming projects. Some of the recently completed work that we do have is the Beach Lagoon Timber Bridge located at East Beach Lagoon, which was our contractor did an outstanding job down there. We've received a lot of feedback, so glad that project came off well. And also Sand Hill Crane Road was recently resurfaced, and that's a little closer to the Ocean Gate. So again, we've been really busy out there the last couple of months, and have some upcoming work that I would like to mention today. As well, the Greenwood Drive resurfacing from the Greenwood Gate to Sea Pine Circle is in the queue. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, as hopefully the weather cooperates for us. More to come on that. But again, that's a nighttime resurfacing, evening resurfacing job, milling and paving of Greenwood Drive. As we all know, it receives a lot of traffic out there, so much needed repairs to do there on Greenwood Drive. The other small project we have outside the Greenwood Gate is a leisure trail extension from the gate to the Publix Plaza to assist with making that connection for pedestrian and bicycle traffic outside on Greenwood Drive. As we all see on a daily basis, there's a lot of folks that are kind of riding their bikes back and forth on those grassy edges of the road outside the gate. Those are some of the major highlights I have on the projects. Wanted to mention our landscape contractor is in the mix of their flower change out here in Sea Pines. It's the last one of the season, so property owners have seen them flocking to Lot 1 to pick up the spent flowers. So again, I encourage everyone to participate in that. And believe it or not, we're getting ready to turn on our holiday lighting displays here after Thanksgiving. So again, I can't believe it's that time of the year already, but it is. Mr. Chairman, I just want to conclude with some remarks on our land use management program, and then I'm glad to take any questions. Our land use monitor, Ryan Cash, has been doing an outstanding job, extremely busy throughout the community. I just wanted to highlight over the course of last year, he's had well over 500 some odd violations that he's worked on, reported, and followed up on. Most of those are in the area of landscaping, property maintenance, unsightly conditions such as beach towels on railings. And then the other big category he's been tackling is mailbox and mailbox repairs, which he works in tandem with our CSA maintenance sign shop to report those issues. So again, those are the highlights. Glad to take any questions this morning before we move on.
Thank you, Russell. Do we have any questions?
Yes, Kiki.
Mr. Caskey.
Jim? Unmute there. You go.
I was working on that. Russell, great report and great work. And maybe Sam, you're going to pick this up later on, but maybe a quick update on how that utility, the new water line and plantation, all that, and how that's interfacing with us and traffic and all those issues.
Sam, would you like me to take that question?
Sure, go ahead, Russell, and I'll add some color commentary as necessary.
Thank you. Appreciate the question, Jim. Yeah, as we know, this is essential utility services for the community. South Island PSD has multiple contractors working out there on this project. They've made some really terrific progress to date. They started with the water line installation in the Baynard Ruins area and are almost up to Lighthouse Road and to the water tower that's located at Muirfield Road. From there, they'll be working up Plantation Drive to the Lawton Stables area. And then eventually they'll be boring underneath Greenwood Drive in location by the farm. And then from there, continue on the project. But to respond to your comment, we've had a lot of cooperation down there from property owners. It's gone from our vantage point.
Russell just froze.
Russell, we just froze, so I'll pick up where Russell, I think he's going. We think the project is going very well. The contractor has done a very good job of meeting timelines and deadlines we've set on the contractor as it relates to Plantation Drive. As everyone is very aware, that road is a key artery through Sea Pines, and particularly starting in the spring prior to the tournaments and tournament setup. And so we anticipate the contractor to be out of there and that road to be milled and repaved by end of February. And so that section of the project will be completed at South Island Public Service District will turn that section of the water line on, I anticipate, in the spring. There are a couple of things that are there now that are temporary structures that have sort of an industrial look to them, some piping and valving that are just designed, they're temporary bypasses. Those will go away. The landscaping will be put back in place. So our instruction and challenge to the Public Service District is to get all this done prior to Heritage setup, with a new road there, an improved trail, and the improved water system. And then they'll begin the second phase of it, of Plantation Drive, moving down the area where they're clearing the trees now between Lighthouse Road and Greenwood Drive. 90 or so trees are coming down. The vast majority of those are either a sweet gum or a pine tree. All of those trees will be replaced with a hardwood, a palmetto, or some type of longleaf pine at CSA's direction. Once that section is done, we'll make those analyses in the field so that it makes the most sense for Plantation Drive and for the vista and the view driving down Plantation Drive. And then all of those trees will have landscaping with them, not landscaping, but water, irrigation associated with them, so that they will thrive and grow, and they will be here for generations to come. Never like to lose a tree, but I think between Russell's work with South Island Public Service District and the district's understanding of just how special our trees are in Sea Pines, they've all done a great job in routing that necessary improvement in a way that does as minimal to the tree canopy as possible down there, and allows us to make the canopy even better moving ahead in the coming years. So,
And Sam, that's all of that is at their expense.
Yes, sir. This is all at their expense. Yeah, CSA has no skin in this game whatsoever, other than the time we given them to direct these things and to make the improvements at our direction. Any other questions about that?
Yeah, again, so I think the tree issue obviously upset a number of our property owners. We really couldn't stop them from doing this work on their easement and right of way. So I'm pleased that we had as much impact on both the removal and the replacement of trees as we have. So I appreciate the staff's work and working with and their cooperation and making sure that Sea Pines didn't lose its look along that very important stretch of roadway.
Thank you. Russell, you appear to be back online. Do you have anything else you need to add? I tried to cover the rest of it for you.
No, sir. I did miss most of that, as had a significant glitch on this end. So, but no, we're good.
Well, just assume I covered everything very well and made you look good. So
I appreciate that, Sam. Thank you very much.
As always, Sam.
The only other thing I would add, since we're talking about utility right of way, is one of the things Russell's working on with our legal team is figuring out what authority we have in certain areas of the legal right of way as it relates to signage that some of the utility companies have placed in the right of way. You've probably noticed there are some telecommunication markers along some of the roadways, these orange poles, and they're very unsightly, and we're working to figure out what authority that we have in controlling those, and if they can be removed or at least made much smaller, much more appropriate for CPIN. So that's another issue in the right of ways, the utility right of ways and easements that we're working on right now, and hope to have more back on that in the coming month.
Need more orange buildings.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions for Russell or Sam on capital projects or land use management? Seeing none, we'll turn to Amanda Jones on communications. Ms. Sutcliffe Jones, there you are.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, board members, and good morning to those who are joining us via our live stream or those that might watch this video at a later date. Just a couple of quick comments from the communications department. As Larry mentioned a bit earlier, if you have questions for the board for their consideration, please send those to questions@csacpines.com. The communications department is actively monitoring that account, and we'll make sure to get those to them, and they'll be addressed after the board meeting adjournment. A quick reminder related to CPIN CSA elections. Our elections are open. They are open until December 1st. 11:59 p.m. If you've had a chance to vote, we appreciate it. If you have not taken the chance to vote, please do so. You would have received an email opportunity on November 1st, and they also were mailed to the notice of mailing for eligible voting properties. Please take the time to do so. Class A candidates include David Ellis, Leanne Leahy, Ted Levitt, David Pardue, as well as Mr. Bob Quinn. And our Class B commercial candidate for this year is Mark King. All of our elections information is posted on our website at cpinesliving.com/elections. It is also committee application season. If you are interested in serving on a committee for CSA, please fill out an application, also available on our website, cpinesliving.com/committees. Those applications are due by December 1st. And just as a quick reminder, we do have a Facebook page. If you'd like to follow us there, that would be a great way to stay up to date on the information that we post on our website, but also on our Facebook page, which can be found at facebook.com/cpinesliving. If our staff can be of any assistance, please feel free to reach out to us by phone. The admin office line is 843-671-1343, or you can email our general information email inbox at info@csacpines.com. That's all I have at the moment, Larry. Happy to take any questions.
Amanda, you mentioned our Facebook page. I know on social media, sometimes people will ask questions on a variety of other pages. And then the question is, why don't you ask CSA? If someone puts a question on our Facebook page, is it monitored and then the questions are answered?
Yes, sir. The communications department regularly monitors our Facebook page, and certainly happy to address questions that come into that page. But alternatively, they can also email us or call us. So lots of ways to reach us. Happy to help when we can.
Right. I just urge the public who occasionally asks questions on other pages that going to the source for what to do with CSA is probably the easier way to get your answer. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions for Amanda? Seeing none, then thank you, Amanda, very much. We'll move on to Finance and Administration. Ms. Shanahan. You want to unmute? Unmute. You have to unmute, Victoria. There we go.
Okay, you can hear me now. I
Start
have
again.
to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Borghese. I have been here now 7 years, and I could not have done what I've been able to do without his support. And I'm truly, truly appreciative. And I'm not going away. So, okay. All right.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's right. The finance department has obviously been working on the 2023 budget, which you'll see here in just a few minutes. We've also been working on billing and collecting of that critical infrastructure assessment. We have collected just over $1 million as of this morning of that. So that's about 28%. It's been collected. It's due December the 12th. We're also prepping upon approval of the budget for the 2023 assessments. We anticipate those going out in mid-December. And as you know, the board of directors has given additional time to remit that payment. It's normally due in January, but next year it won't be due until April 1st. And as we did with the critical infrastructure assessment, we will be doing most of that electronically. Moving on to other parts of the administration department, our front security staff is gearing up for the 2023 commercial decal sales. And our human resources department is working on open enrollment for the employee health insurance renewals coming up January 1. And finally, information technology. I know you all know about CSA 360. We are continuing to implement more modules. We currently have dispatch going, patrol going, and it's very successful at the gates. And the next modules to come on board here in the next couple of weeks will be the rental management as well as the property owners. That's my report. Does anyone have any questions?
Seeing none. Thank you, Victoria. We will move on. Thank you for that report. And we'll move on to Jared Mays, Maintenance and Facilities.
Hello, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Jared.
I just want to go over a few of the projects that we've been working on briefly. We've been doing some roadside mulching. I don't know if you've seen the CSA guys out working. We did some work on Greenwood Drive and Plantation. We did some in front of the admin building, and we're going to continue to install roadside mulch throughout the rest of the year. Also, we've been doing Leisure Trail sightline trimming. We completed the section on Greenwood Drive between Fraser Circle and Old Military. We'll continue to trim vegetation to improve safety and sight lines throughout the rest of the year. As far as stormwater repairs, we've repaired a catch basin on Ready Turnstone and also on Sand Hill Crane. And ditch cleaning, we've done Planters Wood, Long Marsh, Greenwood Drive, by the stables is gonna be our next area. And I did want to touch, as everybody knows, we've had two, what could have been very significant storms come through in the last 6 weeks, I believe. One was Ian, which was on September 29th, and then Nicole, which was just Thursday of last week. Just wanted to run through some of the things that we did to help prepare the community for those events. For both events, we rented 4 additional trailer mounted high flow pumps to supplement the CSA pumps that we already have. And we set those pumps at significant outfalls to help move water outside of the community. We lowered all lagoon levels, cleaned catch basins to clear obstructions, not instructions. We moved the portable generator to the CSA admin building to provide power to the command center if power goes out. Fueled up all vehicles and equipment, sharpened chainsaws. We set up a response kit for each vehicle consisting of necessary tools, chainsaws, rakes, pitchforks, fuel, etc. We had equipment staged on trailers ready to deploy as needed. And we actually gathered a crew that stayed on site for Ian. I believe we had 15 employees from the maintenance department on site overnight. And those crews, we broke them into 2 different crews. They worked they were able to cover 24 hours of patrol for the community, trying to proactively look for trees, limbs, debris, and water on the roads. This way, with 2 different crews, we were able to stagger the shifts so some could rest while the others were out, and vice versa. And I'm just thankful that both storms were a lot milder than they could have been. I think we really got lucky on those, but I do feel that we were prepared to respond as needed to those storms. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Jared? Thank you, Jared. I do want to again acknowledge and recognize the hard work that the staff puts in anticipation of storms. Sea Pines has been lucky the last 2, but they both moved away at a time when they were at one point a direct hit. So knowing that we are prepared for the worst should make us all feel quite comfortable. And I know it's a lot of work in advance of a storm. Breathing easier that we didn't have to use the resources is always a better result. But thank you for all the work that went into being prepared.
Of course, it's always good practice for the staff as well.
Right.
Larry, if I can add a couple of things to that.
Sure, Sam.
We've learned a few things, and you'll see in the upcoming budget, we're going to be asking to spend some additional dollars on pumps and things of that nature so that we can be better prepared to manage the lagoons. Lessons learned on how to prepare the incoming tides and things that we need to do I won't say a better job of, but do differently than we've done in the past. So thankfully two storms that passed us by, but they were good learning experiences, because one day it will be our turn again, unfortunately. And I think this has helped us be better prepared for that day when it is, and moving into hopefully the rest of the quiet season this year, and then prepare for next year. So I appreciate Jared and his team, Doug, all those men and women over there. They worked very, very hard during these two storms to make sure that we were fully prepared for them. So thank you, Jared.
Yep, thank you.
And Sam, if I recall, we'll talk about it in the budget, but I think you've actually included in the budget, now that we anticipate having some of the fees necessary, some additional capital equipment that is currently being leased on a case-by-case basis. So we have it in-house, ready to roll.
But that is correct. It will be used during storms, as well as when we begin the maintenance of the lagoons themselves for clean out and dredging.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to ops and special projects. Mr. David Henderson.
Thank you,
David.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. Just wanted to provide you a few updates on the Sea Pines Forest Preserve. We were able to successfully hold our 11th annual bonfire event this past Friday. And as you were aware, due to her tropical storm, Nicole, we were forced to move inside. So I wanted to start by thanking Bob Gossett and the Salty Dog and his incredible team down there. In a matter of hours, transformed a restaurant that had been closed for the off season into a lovely event venue. And the majority of people were able to show up and enjoy the wonderful food and the wonderful setting there at the marina, and could not have done it without them. So we're very, very appreciative of that, and we hope to be back next year at Fish Island. Also wanted to take the opportunity to thank those that supported the event, the attendees. We appreciate the support. Also acknowledge the sponsors. We could not hold this event without them, in addition to all the work that the Salty Dog did. I had the Heritage Classic Foundation, Arbor Nature, Greg's Decks, Docks, and Seawalls, Action Arborist, Atlantic Asphalt, and last but not least, the Sea Pines Resort. We really, really appreciated everything that they did. Also to Diana Bossy and her team that put together the silent auction. We hadn't had one in some years, and so they kind of resurrected that and did all that hard work in soliciting, obtaining, storing, organizing, presenting, and then closing the deal during the silent auction. So as of yesterday at noon, every single item has been claimed and paid for, and that's almost unheard of in a silent auction. So it's thanks to all of their hard work that they were able to put that together. Our annual solicitation letter has dropped and is out. You all may have received it, should have received it. We've received quite a few already from folks, but if you haven't had a chance to do that, we ask that you take a look at it and consider supporting the Forest Preserve for this coming year. We are excited about a new round of shell ring signage with accompanying videos that has been made possible by archaeological work that Binghamton University conducted from 2015 to 19, but also by a grant from the town of Hilton Head Island's accommodations tax program. The videos have been completed. The sign panels are in production, and we do anticipate receiving those and having those installed and can be presented to the community toward the end of the year. Lastly, on the Forest Preserve, we have an Explore Your Forest Preserve event that will be coming up in early December. So keep an eye potentially as early as next week on CSA weekly emails for additional information on that. But it's a great way for you to get out and experience some of our natural treasure. Mr. Chair, the last item I had is related to Six Oaks Cemetery. The cemetery will be hosting our 13th annual Wreaths Across America event, and that event will be on Saturday, December 17th at noon. If you have not had a chance to go out to Six Oaks to experience that ceremony, in which there will be a wreath that will be placed on every single veteran's grave that is in the cemetery, I encourage you to do so. It's a really, really nice event and a nice acknowledgement of those that have served us all. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to take any questions should you have any.
Any questions for David? I would encourage members of the public who don't otherwise use the forest preserve or know really what's out there to take advantage of the opportunity to get a ride through on that See the Forest Preserve. It's a facet. As someone who had not been in the Forest Preserve for almost 15 years before becoming chairman of the Forest Preserve Trust, I can tell you it's a fascinating place. It really is a treasure, not unlike Central Park in New York. And for those who haven't seen it, this is an opportunity to get a free view with touring professionals. So I encourage them to go there. Hearing none of those, then David, thank you very much for that report. We'll move on to Mr. McSwain, Safety, Security, and Transportation.
Good morning,
Welcome, Toby.
everyone. Just a quick update from the security department. Since our last meeting, security has responded to a total of 1,700, a little over 1,700 calls for service. Of those calls, a little over 1,000 were security related, 600 guest services related, 32 maintenance, and 17 medical calls. Just to highlight some of the calls, one of our top is our wildlife calls. We ran 181 calls, 169 activated alarms. Domestic animals continue to be an issue. 49 of those we responded to. Covenant violations, 61, 50 noise complaints, suspicious activity, health and welfare, improper parking, 46 cars, property damage, 15 cases, 21 ARB violations, suspicious activity in the community, 21, 67 911 hang-up calls, 16 improper dumping violations, domestic dispute. We've been to 7 since our last meeting in September. We've had 6 motor vehicle collisions since then. 4 of those were with injuries. We've also responded to 4 people that have fallen on bicycles with injuries as well. And lastly, but not least, we've made 2 DUI arrests since our last meeting in September. I've received a number of calls and emails, some not so good, concerning the fence, the bicycle gate at the Greenwood gate. We are very aware that the gate is broken. We're working with our vendor. We're waiting on a part to come in to get that gate back in operation. We do have a camera on the gate. We're trying to monitor it the best that we can, but we're waiting on a part to get this gate back up and running again. And as always, we continue our quest to fill the job vacancies that we have here. We do currently have 15 applications that we're sorting through to see if any of those are viable candidates. And I'm really happy to report that we have made a selection and working through the hiring process of a new trolley manager that would, if everything in the hiring goes well, would start just shortly after Thanksgiving. So we're really excited about getting someone in here because I'm really don't want to serve as a trolley manager anymore. The phone literally rings off the hook of people wanting to rent these trolleys. What is the new schedule? So it'd be nice to get this person on board and get them hired. And that concludes my report for today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Toby. Any questions for Toby?
Larry, I have one additional add
Sure.
to the report, and I want to thank Toby for handling a very unusual situation yesterday that we had in Sea Pines, and we sent a note out to the community. One of our employees discovered a metal object in the Sea Pines Forest Preserve that appeared to be a piece of old military ordnance. It came in an area that was generally used for dredge disposal many years ago, 50s and 60s, while Sea Pines was being built. We believe the recent rains unearthed the object. And so Toby and his folks with some of the maintenance employees yesterday and experts from the Marine Corps Air Station. And Toby, if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. Took the object to the pit area and neutralized the objects about 3:30 yesterday afternoon. Best guess is it was some type of old bazooka round from the 50s or 60s. But just one of those things that quite unusual for us to have to deal with something like that here in Sea Pines, but that's what was going on yesterday. I want to thank Toby and the security department as well as the maintenance folks for safely and securing, identifying that and handling it. And one of those things is just never to expect to have to deal with, but there we are. Toby, anything to add to that?
Yep, you've kind of covered it all, Sam.
And Sam, I understand that a number of folks, particularly relatively close to Forest Preserve in the Carolina Place area and along maybe others, did hear a loud boom. We didn't want to disturb folks and create concerns. There was never any danger outside the very immediate area that place was. So I think it's worth noting that all Toby and you and the staff took all absolute necessary measures to assure that nothing would possibly get beyond the actual detonation site, and therefore none of our residents were in danger. The noise may have bothered them, but there was never any danger. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And
Thank
Sam, what's your theory of how that got there? Just to close that loop on safety, that, we don't have anybody doing practice artillery rounds in our forest preserve.
Well, the folks from the Marine Corps believe it more than likely came up through a dredging process from years ago, probably a mechanical dredge somewhere in the Calabogie Sounds, and it just ended up there as they were building roads and bringing materials into the forest preserve. Again, this piece of ordinance was from the 50s or 60s, so the folks from the air station went out and looked at the area in general, and they believe this was certainly a one-off and something that came up with the dredge, and so we're comfortable with that as well, Jim.
Okay. I want to thank all the directors for their reports and for the hard work they put in day after day in maintaining Sea Pines as the premier community we are. So thank you all. Thank you for the staff that worked so hard, and Sam and your team. I'll next move on to the financial report. Ms. Shanahan, the financial statements through September 30.
Yes, I'm going to just go through them very briefly. We'll start with the balance sheet. As of September 30th, there was a significant amount of cash, but that was just a simple timing issue that has been subsequently invested and or spent. Moving down to the liability section, just one thing to point out is we are still holding a retainage for that North Sea Pines Drive project. As Russell mentioned earlier, they are back doing some cleanup work. And finally, down to fund balances, you'll note that, as you all are aware, we have gone ahead and spent the critical infrastructure funds. So far, we have spent $2.5 million of that. The next statement shows the changes in the fund balance. I'm not going to go into complete detail, just wanted to mention that of that critical infrastructure, we've spent 1.1 this year, and we were able to fund the remainder of the major repairs and replacements and capital purchases through the operations to keep that capital reserve fund whole. Moving on to the income statement, we have actual versus budget and then actual versus last year. One thing to note is the gate figures are down slightly. It's less than 1%, so it's nothing of concern, even though they're down from budget and down from last year, they're significantly higher than they were in 2019. I have noted on the face of the financial statement any significant variances between budget and actual. And two things to point out is that it's a timing difference for that major repairs and replacements. We have budgeted through September at 7.5 million. We've only spent 1.9, that's why you have that 5.5 variance against budget. So we ended the time period as a positive 1.4. You will note that last line item is a change in market value of investments. That's an unrealized paper loss. We expect that to right itself. And then following that is just some details about the major projects and the capital expenditures. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from any of the board on these financial statements? I know we've had them and had a chance to study them. Seeing no questions, I'll move for acceptance, but resolve Sea Pines Community Services Associates, Inc. Board of Directors, as recommended by the Finance Committee, accepts the financial statements year-to-date September 30, 2022 as presented. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. If there are no comments, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? Seeing none, that resolution passes.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Shanahan, you want to go on to the next adoption of the auditor?
I'm gonna go a little bit out of order and ask Mr. Borghese to touch on item 9B, the adoption of the auditor.
Yeah, just so you know, every year, it's incumbent upon the board of directors to engage our external auditor, our external and independent auditors, who have been Elliott Davis for the last several years. And we believe they have done a very satisfactory job at a very reasonable price. And I would like to move that the board of directors again appoint Elliott Davis as our external auditor for the audit of the 2022 year-end financial statements.
David and Victoria, I know a couple of years ago, there was some concern with the service we were getting, and I think we actually looked at the potential alternatives. And as I recall, the decision was we were going to push them to give us better service and a good price, and we couldn't do any better. Is that still your view?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I agree with that.
And we have significant oversight coming from the Finance Committee in dealing with the external auditors.
Yes, and if you've sat in, having sat in with the Finance Committee, I can assure you that is a very experienced and talented group that makes sure that everything is done appropriately. Jim
Larry?
Caskey? Yes.
Yeah, David, could you just speak to, given we've had multiple years of this engagement, how you reviewed the partner? Have they rotated the partner as we've gone through this to make sure we maintain checks and balances on the external relationship?
The current partner has been our partner for, I think, 3 years now.
Yes.
And typically, at least when I was in public accounting, it was a 7-year rotation, which was pretty much the mandatory. So I think we're okay with respect to what I'll call the independence of the engagement partner. But they also have, an advisory partner that oversees the quality of the audit that is performed by the engagement team. On top of that, their staffing has been far more, I'd say, continuous with the people that have been assigned to our engagement, so that we're not faced with a constant turnover of new personnel coming in. So I think that we have seen that they have responded to our what I'll call our issues or concerns about the quality of the work that has been performed, and I think they deserve another year.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll move for approval of the adoption of the auditor. Resolve Sea Pines Community Services Associates, Inc. Board of Directors approves adoption of Elliott Davis, LLC as auditor for Sea Pines CSA's financial statements year end December 31, 2022. Is there a second?
No second.
All in favor? Raise your hands. Any opposition? Anyone opposed? That passes. Okay, we'll then go on to the assessments. Ms. Shanahan?
All right, give me a second to share my screen.
Okay.
All right, everybody see that?
That's the budget. Are we good? You want to do the assessment?
Well, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Just
Okay,
okay. That's going to be my first slide.
okay.
Okay, for the covenants, the 74 covenants, they say that the board of directors may increase the residential property annual assessment by as much as the percentage change in the CPI for the immediately preceding year. The latest CPI just came out a few days ago, so it's an increase. And so we can't see it on this end, but it's an increase from $1,752 for an improved lot to $1,887 for for an unimproved lot, which there are only 53, goes from 1,046 to 1,127. And just to the right of that, I did indicate what portion of that is part of the critical infrastructure.
The 7.8% increase.
Thank you. 7.8% increase. So I will need a motion to approve the increase in the residential property owner assessment for 2023.
That is Resolution 9C, which reads Sea Pines Community Service Associates Board of Directors approves an increase over the 2022 assessment, bringing the 2023 residential property owner's annual assessment on an improved lot from 1752 to 1887, which includes the $647 of critical infrastructure. And the 2023 residential property owner's annual assessment on an unimproved lot from 1046 to 1127, which includes 388 of the critical infrastructure of the assessment. Do we have any questions? Anyone? Seeing none, I'll call for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hands. Sam, I can't see everyone. I assume
Nobody
you
can
can.
see anybody, so.
Let's put the screen back on. Vic, can you share that so we can see what we're doing?
Yeah.
Hang on one second. All right, now raise hands, please.
All in favor? Okay. And again, thank you all. And to confirm, Victoria, the bills will go out within sometime this next month in December, but they won't be due until April 1.
That's correct.
Of course, we encourage anyone who wants to pay early to do so, but it's not necessary. Okay. Resolution 9C has passed. Shall we move on to the budget?
All right. All right. There we go. There we go. Okay, so as you all just passed, that first line item is your residential assessments. The next line item is the critical infrastructure assessment. I just did want to point out that that is all contributors to the critical infrastructure assessment, both residential, resort, and commercial properties. Again, we have commercial property assessments, gate entry and permit fees. We were extremely conservative in budgeting for the gate entry and permit fees. As I did indicate earlier, there's been a slight decrease in the volume. And then you'll see that rental registration fee of 1.233. That's a very conservative number that has to do with where the board approved back in May to implement a rental registration fee for anybody who's renting their home here in Sea Pines. That becomes effective January 1, but the bills will not be generated until I anticipate around late spring. Again, the operating expenditures, as we indicated earlier, maintenance is having an expanded operations. Community development, that includes our very large contract with our landscaping contractor. Land use management is expanding. We now have 2 land use monitors with anticipation of getting 3. Safety and security is also being expanded. We need, as we've said many, many times, all this rental, short-term rental activity is putting a huge burden on our safety and security, particularly patrol staff. So we need more of those.
And just a reminder to the board that we put Victoria put together a very extensive correlation between that data over the rise in short-term rentals and the costs associated with providing a higher level of service and all those things, just to harken back to that a bit.
Okay, and so I'll get to major repairs and replacements in just a moment. So we are budgeting for a slight deficit of 101,501. If you do a cash flow analysis, add back depreciation and amortization, plus your deduct your capital expenditures, we have a budgeted cash use of just over 34,000.
Victoria, on the operating expenditures, particularly in land use management, maintenance, and safety and security, you have budgeted for full staffing at what we anticipate is the necessary compensation levels. And I know Sam's going to talk about that a little bit, I'm sure, a bit, but so this is a conservative budget in the sense that we don't know whether we can fill those staffs, and we don't know how high we'll need to go to do that. So I just want to remind the board that we are still looking at being understaffed and underpaid. So we're going to be pushing the envelope there.
That's absolutely correct, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I'm going to move on. I just did a graph showing you those operating revenues and the percentage of the total. So I thought you'd be interested in that. And I did the same for the operating expenditures, just so you could see how they relate overall. And finally, the major repairs and replacements. I broke it out by the type of project. You've got a small amount of facilities that's here in this building: bridges, boardwalks, leisure trails, drainage reconstruction, tertiary road reconstruction, primary road reconstruction, and finally equipment and vehicles. And I noted down at the bottom where those are being funded. Operations is funding 1.782, and the critical infrastructure is funding 4.461. I don't know if you all recall, but it has been our historical practice that operations can typically fund between 1.6 and 1.8 of these major repairs and replacements and capital purchases. So we're still within that same perimeter, and that keeps our fund balance within our funding policies. And finally, of that critical infrastructure, I just made this graph to kind of show the residential property owners, okay, your additional critical assessment is $647 in 2023, and how will those funds be spent? 169 is drainage reconstruction, 93 tertiary, and 385 for primary. That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Can we get the full screen back?
Yeah, I'd like to make just a comment. I mean, when we went through the first slide as to the amount of residential assessment being approximately $1,800. Okay, that included the critical infrastructure. But when you see the slide and when you see the financial statement, you see that the critical infrastructure is broken out as a separate line item. And the reason for doing that is to make sure that we can continue to monitor the amount of funds that we receive against the amount of funds that we're expending for the critical infrastructure. So it's a way for us to be transparent and a way for us to have the internal controls to determine that we are appropriately spending the money for which the referendum was intended to be used for. And that is the reason why it is split out the way it is split out on the budget and in our internal financial statements. So I just wanted to make that. And if you go back to the particular slides, you will see that for the budget, we are expecting to receive approximately $4.2 million, but we will be expending per budget $4.4 million. So we're still going to be spending more in 2023 than the referendum is bringing in. And, you know, at some point in time, we're going to have to catch up, but we're going to spend what we need to spend in order to serve this community. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, David.
And I'd like to add one other thing to sort of out of that slide. Again, back to the rental registration fees, or the other new component to our revenue stream for this year. Again, just remind the board that we went through a very extensive analysis of what rentals have been doing over the last 5 years, Victoria, and the calls for service from the safety and security department, the LUM violations, all those things, and the trend lines are certainly there and show the need for additional resources to manage the additional calls for service from security all the way through land use management. we've broken that out separately. It's not rolled in anything else. It's a standalone revenue source. And our intention is to analyze that revenue source and those expenditures as we move through the budget to make sure they're tracking in a way we thought they would. And just again, a reminder, those resources will go towards hiring new security officers to help with the increased volumes that we have here, and additional land use monitors to help with the non-law enforcement things that we have come through that are generated by short-term rentals. And then additionally help us to pay for all those folks a very competitive wage so that we can get the quality individuals here that we need to have here to do those jobs. So that's new for us. As we move into the new year, we're going to be tracking the revenues and the expenses associated with it so that we can show where those dollars are going and being spent as well, just like we're going to do with the short-term, with the critical infrastructure fund.
Sam,
Go ahead, Jim.
Sam, to that point, and David, yours, I don't sit on the finance committee, but looking at the presentation of the budget, we declared early in this process that we had two bogeys. We had infrastructure problems and long-term needs, and we had operating issues that we needed to make additional investments. And I think the way you've laid it out, the way you have the line items identified, really sets the stage so that when we go into the new year, we can hold you accountable, hold ourselves accountable for the monies that are being collected or being expended in the manner that they're described, and that we're actually impacting the overall quality and safety of the community. So I kudos, because I didn't go through all the detail with you all in the finance committee, but the way you've laid it out, and David, your point about the accountability on that infrastructure makes me feel very good as for my fiduciary responsibility, managing the assets and the revenues of this community. So kudos, well done.
And I want to add, I know obviously not every person that rents their home is going to be happy having to pay a fee, but the board, I want to remind folks that the board did two things. One is we put the fee a full 9 months in advance so that those who choose to may collect some of that back through small increases in the rental rate. And I know obviously I don't rent, so I don't know how flexible they are, but based on the amount of dollars that are coming in that I do read, it would look like this should still be a small amount. Second thing is we're putting it off till April to even bill it till April, so that hopefully the revenue stream that's coming in from the peak season will have already started to help defray some of that. So, but most importantly, I think the presentation that was done back in May demonstrates the need and the correlation between the increased amount of rentals that we have in the community. We're not discouraging rentals. They are a fact of life in Sea Pines, but we have to recognize that someone who comes in for a week or 2 weeks tends to create more calls for service and more problems than someone who's a full-time resident. Not that residents don't have their own issues. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions on the budget itself? That's a big issue. As I indicated in my letter last night, I think we can be very proud that for the first time in a long time, we have a budget before us that has grown dramatically to meet the needs of a fully occupied Sea Pines. And we, for the first time in a long time, have the revenue streams necessary to support that. So I think we can take some comfort in the fact that the community will be run the way it should be run, not on a shoestring. Any other questions? If not, I'll move for approval of the budget. Sea Pines Community Services Associates Inc. Board of Directors approves budget 2023 as presented. Resolution 9D. Is there a second?
No, second.
Mr. Borghese again. All in favor, raise your hands. Any opposition? Seeing none, the budget is approved. Victoria, I want to thank you, David, and the Finance Committee for all the hard work that was put into this, and obviously Sam and the rest of your staff as well. It's a job well done. Thank you.
The hard work's ahead of me, Larry.
Okay. We will now move on to committee reports. Mr. Borghese, you get to start off with finance.
Yes, Finance Committee did have a meeting prior to today. I think it was last week. We went through the financial statements for September 30. We went through the budget presentation that you've just seen. And we also reviewed the calculation methodology for the 2023 assessments. Obviously, we could only deal with the methodology because at that point in time, the October CPI numbers hadn't yet been developed and released. We discussed, we have an ongoing discussion about the review for our investment policy, and that will be ongoing. And lastly, we talked about technical accounting issues and that we will seek guidance from our external auditor before we issue the year-end financial statements to make sure that everything is in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that's what happened. But at this point in time, I would like to take just a moment to say it has been an honor to have been elected by this community for 3 times, starting in 2013. And it has been my privilege to have worked with our outstanding staff. And I will have to tell you that from 2013 to today, we are light years ahead in respect to the quality of the staff that we have compared to 10 years ago. And lastly, this is a shout out to all of the volunteers who have served on the various finance committees over all those years. As a community, we are really fortunate to have the time and talent of knowledgeable individuals who have been willing to participate for the benefit of Sea Pines. So lastly, I'd like to just say thank you all for the opportunity.
David, on behalf of the board and the community, thank you for your leadership of that committee. So thank you again. Okay, any questions for David? Seeing none, we'll move on to gate entry.
Thank you. We did have a meeting October the 26th, and some of what we reviewed has already been reported, but I will state that Victoria did give an update on the gate passes sold, and as you commented in her financials, the gate passes are down in total about 1%. Also, the total number of gate passes that have been issued at the Sea Pines Welcome Center are down about 3%, and that's for all the gate passes there, including short-term rentals. So the property owner passes have decreased approximately 8% in 2022 compared to 2021. Toby and Victoria did report on the CSA 360, so I think we're all aware of what's going on with that and the launch and how it's being operated. Toby did comment on gate pass or gate staff personnel, that we still continue to have issues and problems with that, trying to get all the people needed, but we are looking at different incentive programs to recruit new applicants and so forth. As I think I reported at our last meeting, we do have a trolley operations task force kind of looking at the trolley operations for 2024, not so much on 2023, because those 2023 is already in production. That's how we need to lay it out. But then for the future, primarily because of the decrease in ridership on all routes, the lack of the trolley drivers and the new regulations about further training that they've got to go through. And then with Lou Matea that is retiring, we just need to kind of take a look at the entire operations of the trolleys and see how we can make recommendations to change and or improve. So that covers our comments and our agenda. So thank you.
Any questions for Carrie Corbett on the gate entry? Seeing none, we'll move on to governance. Mr. Caskey.
Yeah, thank you. Governance committee in the early fall began to tackle the whole desire or the goal to update the vision and mission of CSA. And we've had very good dynamic discussions about what the aspirational statements should be for CSA and what should our purpose be, which is our mission statement. And from that, we've begun to develop a document that frames the context of what CSA is, the goalposts of CSA. CSA is not Sea Pines. CSA is a shared services operating organization. And so we are coming to, we hope by the end of the year, I think the next meeting is going to be December 6th, to bring forward a very short, straightforward document that frames the whole history and the issues around CSA, and then ends with a vision and mission that's grounded in a principle of mutual benefit and common good. Now, when we come together as CSA's board, we do it with all these different constituent parts. But when we're sitting here like we are today, the decisions we make are on behalf of the overall common good of the community, not an individual party. So we hope that this document will give some philosophical backdrop to how we make decisions and how we communicate the real vision and mission and what we do as CSA. So that's a early advertisement of what's going to be coming through by the end of the year. And hopefully the board will be able to take action on these updated vision and mission statements and the principle of common good as we enter the new year. Questions?
Thank you, Jim. That's a big task, and I'm sure that whatever comes out of your next meeting and beyond will be of value to the board next year. Thank you. Land use management, Mr. Thompson. You have to unmute, please, Greg.
Yeah.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. I'm happy to report on two items today. First will be revision to one of the land use management rules, 7.3, that deals with overall property appearance, and then talk a little bit about enforcement. The committee has done some really good work with regard to roadside barriers, which basically is the content of section 7.3. And I think the thing I'm most proud of is that we've changed the context of the rule from telling owners what they can't do with the green space between the road or a leisure trail and their property line. So we now have switched around to here's the things you can do to protect your irrigation, to keep your lawn and that space neat and damage free. So like I say, the committee has done a really good job, and I'd just like to go through the rule with you quickly. The rule starts off saying that as specified by the ARB guidelines, owners are responsible for the landscaping and maintenance of landscaping in rights of way from their property lines to the roadway and public walkways. So the committee's aim was to revise the rule to enable owners to protect roadside strip that, for all intents and purposes, appears to be their property, but in fact, it's CSA right-of-way. And we wanted to do that in a manner that was safe for vehicles, cyclists, and pedestrians, and in harmony with CPINE's aesthetic standards. The property segments include the owner's driveway corners and lawn, landscaping, and often irrigation systems. We also want the process to be more efficient and less costly than the current rules requirement for case-by-case CSA easement and ARB approval. Our recommendation gives the homeowner standardized options and a simple process to pay for and install appropriate barriers. As before, maintenance of the roadside area remains an obligation of the property owner. So pardon my dog. The recommended revision of Rule 7.3, as specified in the ARB guidelines, owners are responsible for the landscaping and maintenance of landscaping and right-of-way from their property lines to the roadway and or leisure trail. Such areas must be kept free of obstacles to vehicles, cyclists, pedestrians, except for those outlined in this regulation. CSA approved mailboxes and non-rigid vegetation are permitted. Roadside barriers may be installed by the owner if they are the type approved by CSA and with agreement from the ARB, which will be in the standard. The two types are rectangular posts, 4 inches on a side or 4x4, and post and rope combinations. They must meet 4 criteria: visible at night, so they can include a small reflector, not closer than 3 feet from the road or paved path surface, no higher than 30 inches from the ground, and either green or brown in color. At driveway corners, posts may be installed with no more than one post per corner. CSA will provide a list of vendors for such barriers. Homemade versions are acceptable if they're identical to the vendor's models. We have Kerry was kind enough to supply us with a vendor who supplied post and rope and barriers for the golf course, and that vendor will be listed as a preferred provider. We're also suggesting that owners that want to put post and rope barriers up with adjacent properties, that they coordinate and plan that for a nice, neat appearance. So the committee stands ready to work with Amanda and CSA Communications on a program to inform property owners of this rule change and help them understand it clearly. Ultimately, the decisions about implementation and enforcement are in the hands of CSA leadership, but we have suggested that we do a soft rollout and allow the attention from the land use monitor to be focused on those properties that are clearly in violation, where folks have put big rocks or barriers. That it concludes my report on the change in the rule. I would like to recognize Ed Warner, Lee Stevens, and Alex Cruden, who provided a great amount of effort and time and expertise in getting this done. The other comments that I would like to make, and I'll take questions, I'd like to reinforce Russell's comments on enforcement. We get a report every month on what's happening with regard to enforcement of the rules. And I'm happy to say that the land use monitor, Ryan in particular, has done a really nice job of working with people. And 9 times out of 10, when Ryan calls or sends a letter to a property owner, they respond quickly and happily. And so that's the good news. We have a community of people who really are concerned about the appearance of the overall community and their properties. And in those cases where people are reluctant to comply, we have the ability to issue fines, which we have done. But that's really a very small number. And so the committee, and certainly it's my belief, is that the rules that we put in place a year and a half ago are working. And the compliance by the community is extremely high. And that concludes my report, and I'll answer any questions.
Greg, I guess, is there a written proposal that the committee would like us to look at?
Yes, Larry, we're working with the ARB. And in fact, the rule change is on the ARB agenda today, and I didn't want to circulate anything until we get clearance from the ARB that the way we've written this is appropriate, and they're okay with the barriers that we've described. So our plan would be to circulate that rule once it's we have the ARB approval to the board, and perhaps get a electronic vote by the end of the year.
Okay. Are there any questions on this proposal? I know we haven't seen it specifically, but it does address what I know a number of neighborhoods on occasion have posts and rocks, largely trying to protect a property owner's property from either parking or from parking by vendors. Sometimes it's a matter of making sure that they can see the driveway as they back out without arrest. But it is intended to stand by kinds of those. Jim Keskey, you had.
Yeah, just Greg, I think you said it, but and to Larry's point, if we implement this, or when we implement this, the requirement, if you've got boulders or whatever, you've got to have those removed and go to the standard format, correct?
That's correct. Okay,
and LUM will be like Ryan would be a resource to be able to help a homeowner decide whether post or rope or whatever. So it's really a constructive approach, but they will have.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. Our intention is to be a support and help to property owners, not to be a police force and force them to do things that they don't want to do or don't make sense. So we want to be, as a committee, here to help people. And I know Ryan and Russell and his team as well want to help people. If they have any questions, we're here to help.
Tom Sharp, you had your hand up.
Yes, Greg, this may be a little too specific, but can you talk a little bit about the size of the rope or quality? Some of those don't last very long and actually start to look very ragged. And then, of course, I guess Ryan can deal with that, but would you take a minute on that, please?
Sure. What we'll be able to post on the Sea Pines Living is essentially an instruction sheet that says, here's, the dimensions and all the specifications of the barriers. And I think I failed to mention that property owners will also have the choice of using posts and rope or things like recycled asphalt at the edge of their property, or other hardscape materials. But there will be a specification on the size, the distance between the post and the size of the rope, and that will all be very clear. Did I answer your question?
Okay. Any other questions? If not, Greg, we'll look forward to receiving that proposal, and we'll either move it through by email or we'll put it on the agenda for next year if there's some kind of
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, and thanks to your committee for the good work that was done. Tom Sharp, maintenance enhancement and major projects.
Yes, good morning. The committee's been meeting and having some good dialogue. I appreciate the contribution of the members. First off, I'd just like to, Russell's given an excellent review of the capital, and appreciate his work. Our community.
Tom, you're breaking up.
Okay.
Tom, you're breaking up. Tom, I'm going to ask you to reconnect. I'm going to go on and to someone else, and if you can reconnect so we can get a clearer signal. I think you've been breaking up. Okay. Okay. While Tom's getting his system together, let's move on to Bill Johnson and safety and security.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our committee met on the 25th of October, and most of the agenda items have already been discussed or brought up either by Toby or Terry Corbin. Throughout the year, looking back in retrospect, all items led to one common denominator, and that was personnel, or a lack of personnel, or sufficient personnel to accomplish our objectives. And I want to thank our board for passing our budget for next year, which gives safety and security, gives Toby the resources to bring in the number of personnel necessary to effectively run this community. Kudos to all of you for recognizing this need. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any questions for Bill? If not, we'll move back to the returned Tom Sharp, hopefully with better signal this time.
All right, hopefully. I appreciate.
Bill, Tom, I'm sorry, you're still digitizing on us, at least here in the office.
Yes, us too. Tom, I know it was going to be a great report, but I think we're going to pass. And we'll accept your report without comment.
Yeah, I think it's feedback.
That's it. Okay, let's move on to Sea Pines Forest Preserve. Charlie Minor, and Tom, if it works out, we'll get back to you. Charlie?
Thank you, Larry. David did a nice job of covering our recent big fundraiser event, the bonfire. I'd like to join David in thanking Bob Gossett and the Salty Dog for an incredible support, providing a beautiful facility for us to work from, wonderful food, great service in terms of the service personnel, and all at no cost to the Forest Preserve. So that is a huge benefit to us. I'd also like to compliment David on scrambling when the weather turned against us and getting this all organized, including all the support people over a very short period of time. And probably next time we'll report on the amount of funds raised by it, but I think they were significant. A second item is that after a little over a year's worth of work, the Forest Preserve has prepared a master plan. This was done largely by John Parsons. It's a long-range plan for the use of the Forest Preserve over time. It has been reviewed and commented on by members of the committee and by the resort. And I'm happy to say that the executive committee met and approved that as a formal plan. That's pretty much my report.
Thank you, Charlie. Amanda, will the master plan be put on the website? Or Sam, I'll ask you.
Sorry, Larry, repeat the question.
Will the master plan, the Forest Preserve master plan, be put on the Sea Pines Living website?
Yes, sir. We will make that master plan available. Absolutely.
Okay. Great, because the Forest Preserve Trust Board of Trustees did meet, and not only did we review the plan, but we actually took a trip through the Forest Preserve to see the various areas that were going to be affected by it. So I urged members of the public to take advantage of what the Forest Preserve's long-range anticipated uses may be as we develop funds, working with the resort to improve the experience in the Forest Preserve. And
Larry, I would like to add a couple of things to Charlie's report just for a second.
Sure.
Not that Charlie needs any help, but I do want to thank Salty Dog and Bob Goffman's team for the event they put on. Amazing event and provided great additional resources to the Forest Preserve. And I just want to remind the community, though, as well, that the Sea Pines Resort has been providing a $2 surcharge for overnight guests, and we're really starting to accrue some money between our fundraisers and the resorts add on to their overnight guests. So with this master plan, for the first time in a long time, we're going to have some real resources to put towards improvements in the Forest Preserve, and I appreciate the partnerships that we're developing for that with the resort's continued support and Salty Dog and the other members of the community. We get a lot of our residential property owners that have a call of purpose towards the Forest Preserve, and so I think the coming a few months and years are going to be great ones for the Forest Preserve, and I know we're excited about what we got in store based on that master plan and having some resources to put towards it. So it's going to be a good time to move ahead and to be here with it.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, if there's any other questions regarding the Forest Preserve, Tom, you think you can give a report?
Well, let's try.
Nope. 3 strikes.
Am I coming through?
Tom, you may want to just dial in with your phone as opposed to your video. Maybe that would improve it if you want to try one more time, but that's up to you.
Short-term rental. We'll move on to short. Thank you. Short-term rental, David Ellis.
Yes, thank you. Short-term rental committee held its meeting last week as our last meeting. Much of what we do has been covered in various other announcements and information given out by the directors and things, so I'm not going to repeat those. We have had short-term rental parking rules that have been adopted, of which we really didn't work with as much as others we touched on. But I do want to tell you that for 3 years of serving on this committee, the first 2 years, I've got an abnormally large number of complaints and emails about short-term rentals and the things they were doing, the noises and the cars and the bikes, etc. And last year was much less. Now, whether it's the number, I suspect that the process has been put in effect so that people know who to call and that and Ryan's in place and Ryan's taking care of it. And so I think it's some of the issues are being met. It's taken a little time from the really tremendous rise to get a hold of some of this. The other thing is we have annual rental agency meetings, and at those meetings for the last 3 years, Toby has really pressured them to get the rules to their renters and to make sure they understood. And I think that the number of the rental agencies are also cooperating more. They can't make the renters read the rules, but somehow I think this is being handled a lot better than it was at least my first of years, 3 years ago. So at this stage, all I would like to do would be to remind anybody who's interested in short-term rental, please also look on the town's website. They just issued a new piece of information about short-term rentals. They will continue to do that. You have to comply not only with the town's regulations and our regulations, but you need to be very cognizant of all of those so that you're doing right and doing the right thing. It's been a pleasure to serve as chairman of this committee for the past 3 years, and I thank you. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Pardue, and that's with strategic planning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone, all board members and listening in guests. The Strategic Planning Committee has completed their meetings for this year. There's not a lot to report that hadn't been reported so far, but let me just briefly review our accomplishments or ideas or whatever for the year. One of the things that we were trying to do is to take the strategic plan that was developed in 2018 and make sure that we were on track with that to the best we could. And fortunately, I would say that 90% of the issues that were developed in 2018, we can kind of check off our box because the staff mainly has, with Sam's leadership, has just done a magnificent job in doing the things that the 2018 plan had called for. The discussions we've had had excellent committee members. The discussions have centered around this year on whether or not we can, let's say, the strategic plan should concentrate on what I would just call blocking and tackling, just main operational things, or whether we should go for more aspirational things that the community may want. There hasn't been any real resolution to that yet. One of the issues that I can echo kind of what Jim Caskey said, and that is that CSA is not CPINES itself. It's a service organization within CPINES, and there's only so much that CSA can do. And when you add on top of that the fact that we don't have any excess money, it makes the aspirationals the aspirational part of strategic plan a little bit more difficult. Maybe next year and in the years future, when our revenue stream is a little bit better than it is now, we can get to some more aspirational things. So that's kind of that's really sort of a work in progress. I greatly appreciate the committee members who have served, and I've got to point out 2 committee members who have done an exceptional job. I've thanked them in the past before, but Ann Esposito and our own Greg Thompson have been just fabulous members. They both have, let's say, more strategic planning expertise than I do because they've had corporate jobs when I've always kind of been a one-man band. But they've been great, and also the staff. Obviously, it's been great working with Sam, but also Stephanie Allison, who's our main staff contact, and Amanda Suffolk Jones have been wonderful with support. My suggestion for next year is that regardless of who the head of the committee is or who our leadership is maybe we can have a little bit better coordination or blending with the governance committee, because so many of the things that governance is trying to do blends so closely in with what strategic plan is discussing and trying to do, that I think maybe a blending of those committees might be helpful. But that's just my personal suggestion. That's really not coming from the committee itself. So anyway, that's my report.
Thank you, David. Any questions for David or comments on strategic planning? Thank you for the work you guys have done. I know it's been a struggle, but given the lack of revenue, but now that we have hopefully some revenue streams, it'll be easier to develop a more future looking rather than day-to-day look. Okay, that's the end. I know Tom can't make it. I do want to mention though, in terms of maintenance, security, maintenance enhancement of major projects, Tom's group has created a small working group that will be working with Sam and his staff to develop priorities on how we spend the capital critical infrastructure money. Dave Borghese mentioned that it's segregated as it's required to be under the amendment, but we also need to prioritize, and those priorities will change from year to year and years to years as projects are done, but also new problems exist. So I want to thank Tom and for the leadership in that regard, and the committee that he's created with Sam and his staff, working to make sure that the money is appropriately spent on what is most important to the community at any given time.
Larry,
So, Tom,
if I can also add to that, part of the goal of that working committee will be to come up with a communications plan so that is clearly communicated to the community what those priorities are, where the projects are in process, what the costs associated with them, those things, so that there's it's very clear where the critical assessment dollars are being spent and how they're being spent.
Thank you, Sam. I know that I don't think the community has any doubt that the money will be well spent, but at least they should have the additional comfort that these are being done under the auspices of members of the community working under the maintenance MEMP committee. Tom?
That's perfect. Good job.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, the next is unfinished business update on CPINE CSA revenue sources proposal. I will just note, as Victoria's noted, the short-term rental registration fee will go into effect on January 1 to be collected in the spring. The critical infrastructure funds are now being collected. Those are the primary. There was two other elements to the 2021 revenue task force. One was gate increases for the commercial dailies, which we proposed in May. I'm pleased to announce that all of the necessary approvals have been obtained for those gate increases, and to give the staff time to make the public aware of them, of what they are, and also to give folks the ability to budget. Those will go into effect on January 1. More information will be coming out through Sam and his staff as to how those rate increases will be implemented. But I want to thank those whose approvals were necessary for providing them, that's an additional source of revenue. The other source was the membership transfer fee, which is still under discussion by the board and will continue to be as we work through some of the legal issues associated with that. So that's that information. Any questions there? Seeing none, the next item on the agenda is the appointment of the chair of the CPINES CSA Officers Nominating Committee. Under the bylaws, Article 4, Section 2, on or before December 1 of each year, the chair, that's me, of the board, shall appoint a former or outgoing chair, vice chair, who is willing and able to serve as chair of the nominating committee for selection of the board elected officers. As I think I've made clear, I will not be serving as your chair next year. I will not be drafted. I will not accept election, and I'm not running. And so I'm going to appoint myself to chair the nominating committee. I will appoint members to that committee in December once the elections are done and we know who members of next year's board will be. And then we will meet next year to figure out a slate of officers for next year's board. Any questions on that? Sam, any questions there?
No, sir.
Okay. You have to have some use of power. Next is the CSA document retention and destruction policy. Do you want to take that, Sam?
Yes, sir. After working with Joanne Berger, who's over our archives and documents, and our our outside general counsel. We're in the process of cleaning up cleaning up is a broad term, but destroying a number of old useless documents. And we sent this out to the board for approval. I think you've all had time to look at it, and we're just looking for you to ratify that so we can begin to clean out those things that are not necessary for CSA to do what it needs to do. We're not destroying anything that's of consequence. These could be check stubs, check payments from 1999 that we still have back in the files, or things of that nature. Those are the kind of things we're talking about, so we can get rid of some of the space. But there is a legal, it is a legal function and a requirement for document retention that our outside counsel has approved the document you guys have before you. So we'd like for you to approval on that so we can begin to get rid of those and reclaim some of the space for the documents and the things that matter.
I can endorse the idea that too many of us and corporations and the law firms, I know in my law firm, in the absence of a document retention policy, you were renting space to store stuff that no longer had any purpose. So this is a good idea to have a policy and start destroying those things we don't need and keeping only those we do. Any questions on this? Any concerns?
You calling a motion on the resolution?
Yes.
I move.
So, any second? Okay, the resolution reads, the Sea Pines Community Service Association's Board of Directors approves the Sea Pines CSA Document Retention and Destruction Policy, November 15, 2022 draft as presented. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, that resolution passes. That's 12C. Sam, you want to pick up the Boys, Girls, and Club Pedals event?
Yes, sir. We were approached by the Boys and Girls Club here on Hilton Head about allowing use of Sea Pines roadways for their annual pedals event, which is a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club. The initial ask was for all riders associated with the event to be allowed to come through Sea Pines. We didn't think that was feasible. Certainly the Boys and Girls Club is an exceptional charity here on the island, and we want to do everything we can to help them, but we have to do it within the framework of what's practical and what makes sense for Sea Pines and for the community. So after starting at one point, what we've reached is we've reached what we think is a fair solution and a way for Sea Pines community to help with this event, to allow what I would call the top tier segment of the groups riding in the Boys and Girls Club pedal event to come through Sea Pines early in the morning, prior to any traffic significant traffic being here, and working through Sea Pines. Should be in the community about 20 minutes. They'd be leaving from Coligny, coming through the back gate, going down Sea Pines Drive, and then exiting out Lighthouse and Greenwood Drive. They would be led by a security, and we early 7:30, 8 o'clock, early in the morning on a Sunday morning, May the 7th, I believe is the date. And we don't see it as an impact or inconvenience. And it's a way to support a very worthy local charity. Unfortunately, we're just not able to accommodate the sort of the broader concept of having hundreds of riders of all skill sets. These are the folks that are top riders in this event that move very quickly, move in packs, and will move in and out of Sea Pines very quickly. So it will take an action of the board to allow this to happen. And so that's the request. And you have before you Kerry Corbett. If you'd like to add anything to that, please do.
Yeah, I will add a couple of comments that these riders will be on the roadway. They will not be on our trails. There's two types of these riders. One are trail riders, which are not going to be coming into Sea Pines. Then there's the road riders. And this is a much less amount of bikers. And it should, like Sam said, it'll come in and go out very, very quickly. And so it is led by, from what we understand, Beaufort County Sheriff's Office will be leading them through this. So we know that this may be a precedent, but we felt that this was something that we could positively support. and knowing that it is going to be highly managed. So with that said,
And I would just add, this is a first, and it may be as well be the last. If it doesn't work, we determine it doesn't work and it wasn't feasible, then this will be a first and the last. So, but it's got to work for the community as well. But so the recommendation from the gate entry committee actually is for the board to approve this and give it an opportunity to try it once.
Well, Kerry, if you'll move it, I'll second it.
There you go.
I'll put it forth that, let me get the resolution here. Seapine Community Service Facility Board of Directors approves the segment of the Boys and Girls Club Pedal event from May 7, 2023 to take place in the Seapine community.
Are there any questions? Are there any questions, concerns? Again, I think this will look like the Tour de France for about 10 minutes in Sea Pines.
Much less riders.
These are the folks that wear the fancy jerseys and tight pants. Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Position? That passes.
Awesome.
Congratulations, and Samuel, let him know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next is approval of the amendment of the Sea Pines gate entry policy draft that's been submitted. Sam, you want to go through that?
Yes, sir. Let me get to it real quick. Let me see here. Thank you. We have an addition to the gate, the gate policy and amendment to section 2.1.13.13.1 that addresses low speed vehicles and the use of low speed vehicles by our business community. It makes clear that the use of low speed vehicles by our business community and our resort is authorized, and that those are the only low speed vehicles authorized to be used in Sea Pines. That other low speed vehicles are not authorized to be used on the streets that CSA is responsible for in Sea Pines. And it also provides for a violation section within the same section that the low speed vehicles or other items covered under this section, which would include recreational vehicles, U-Haul vehicles used inappropriately, motorcycles, those things. There is a fine section associated with this. First offense is a warning, second offense is $250, third offense is $500, and each further violation after that is $1,000. So we're looking to include this into the gate policy moving ahead, and would ask for the board's authorization of this. All the parties to the gate agreement have reviewed this and are on board for it. I think that's a fair statement, and happy to try and answer any questions that the board may have.
Yeah, this will eliminate some confusion as to what the prior exception was, and it will make clear that these low speed vehicles are only allowed by commercial property owners with businesses and the resort. It will also establish a basis for enforcing the rule, with the general rule, which has been in place for a long time, which includes e-bikes and mopes and others, scooters on our paths. Now, obviously, until we have the adequate resources to enforce these, it'll continue to be difficult. But this also provides the basis for future boards to actually develop a policy on what can be permitted, as opposed to an outright violation. I know e-bikes is a matter that, as chairman, I get a number of questions as to why we do allow them, or why we don't allow them for certain categories of seniors and others. And we also get folks who are complaining that we should never allow them on our bike paths. So the board's going to have to face that over the next year or so. But this provides now an opportunity for to enforce against property owners their violation of their rules, which unfortunately some have simply snubbed their nose at us. So I think it's a good rule. I think we've developed fines and forfeitures that are reasonable, including a written warning the first time, a relatively small fine of $250 the next. And if they continue to flaunt our rules, they will in fact start to raise some real dollars against their property. Any questions on this? Seeing none, I'll move to adopt the resolution, which is resolve Sea Pines Community Service Associates Inc. Board of Directors approves amendment to the Sea Pines CSA gate entry policy as presented. All in favor? Any opposition? Seeing none, the resolution passes. Okay. I think we now have one other encroachment agreement for West Royal Turn, Lot 2. You've all had a chance to review it. It was generally approved by email. Is there any questions on any of this? If not, I'll move to approve the CSA Community Service Associates Board of Directors ratifies the vote on the approval of the encroachment agreement for West Royal Turn Lot 2 as evidenced by an as-built survey consultants, Terry Hatchell, et cetera. Is there a second? Mr. Ellis, all in favor, raise your hands. Any opposition? Seeing none, that passes. And that brings us to the end of new business. I am now going to end the meeting with my chairman's remarks. As I noted in my letter last day, and as all of you know, this is my last meeting as your chairman after serving for 3 years. When I became chairman, it was in an unusual time. We had lost our board leadership we could not be reelected, and we lost our president, Martin, who was leaving. And so we were going to be essentially starting with totally new leadership at both the board and the president's level. It has been an absolute delight to have made the right choice in choosing our new president, Sam Bennett, who has worked tirelessly to learn the community, to develop the relationships with the staff that has allowed him to maintain the senior staff that he inherited, which is itself unusual. Sam and I have also developed an incredibly strong relationship in which I promised him from day one I would not micromanage, and I think with maybe 2 exceptions over 3 years, I kept that promise, which allowed Sam to manage this company as the president of the organization should. And although some may believe that because I get my picture on a monthly letter once a month, that I may be the face, the fact of the matter is Sam Bennett is the face of this community. He meets regularly with the property owners. He meets regularly with the town staff. I actually have never done that. He meets regularly with many of you on a regular basis when issues come up. And I think that's the most important part of the job. And so I appreciate Sam and his staff. The board has, when I took over, I promised the community and that I would hope the board would stop kicking cans down the road and start taking on the tough issues. Principally, having just followed a failed referendum, raising money to fix our critical infrastructure. And I'm thrilled that we did that. I know there's litigation as to whether it was done properly or not. Well, that remains to be seen. But we got 88% of the community, 75% voting, 88% of those voting approving it, which I think is a strong statement of support for the direction the community, the board took. We also then this year recognized that there was other needs for operational revenue, and I'm very pleased with the board's decision to not to kick that can down the road, but to adopt fees that would meet those requirements. But that's not all we did. We listened to the community. The community complained about blower noise on a regular basis, and so we adopted noise regulations. We had a land use management committee that was convinced that we needed to strengthen our land use management rules, and we spent literally a year working those rules, including fines and forfeitures, subject to and with the benefit of legal counsel approving it. We developed a short-term rental parking policy that would assure that property owners would not find the cars in their neighbors' rentals all over their lot. And I think that's been a big help to our community there. And we also developed several governance improvements thanks to Jim Caskey's governance, including developing a conflict of interest policy, a confidentiality policy, and normalizing the term limits of our non-board members so that we have a regular rotation. And I think the fact that almost all of our board committees are filled with members of the community who are rotating through and providing new advice benefits the board. Sam and I took over thinking that it was going to be an easy transition, and then COVID hit. And we went from a community in which there were no visitors to a community that was fully occupied within months. And I'm pleased at how well the community and the board has been able to react to Sea Pines fully occupied, both in terms of staffing, in terms of revenue production, and just generally in terms of understanding how Sea Pines is changing and developing the necessary tools for the staff to meet those changes and needs. It has been an absolute delight for me to work with Sam and his staff and to work with board members. I'm sure there are times I know there are times when we haven't always agreed on policy, but I think most importantly, we've been able to develop a strong consensus as to what is in the best interest of the community moving forward. And I am pleased to believe that I will leave the chairmanship with a community that is in better shape than when we started. And I want to thank all of you for all the hard work and effort. People often say it's a thankless job. It's not. I get thanked all the time. People don't appreciate how much time and effort you all serve as board members in working through these issues, working with your committees. It is an equally thankless job, but it is being thanked on a regular basis by members of the community who appreciate what the board does. I know there's often a lot of noise from members of the community. We can't please them all the time. And sometimes the noise levels rise from those who think we're not doing well. But I can assure you that the number of people that I hear from and the correspondence I get tells me that this board is appreciated for all the hard work you do on a voluntary basis, entirely consistently looking out for what is in the best interest of the community, Sea Pines community as a whole. And I want to thank you all for that. Thank you for allowing me to serve as your chairman. And I look forward to continuing as a director under the next group of leadership and hoping we can continue to move the community forward as we've done the last 3 years. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Larry, before we adjourn, outstanding job, outstanding track record. I think you've also missed how much you've advanced the functionality and the financial security and the desirability of the Six Oak Cemetery and the Forest Preserve, which you have chaired both of those processes as well. So you have quite a record to celebrate, and we thank you on behalf of the community. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. With that, I appreciate that, Jim. Thank you all.
Larry, I think before we, it needs to be acknowledged too, that your wife was really the person behind the strength here, and she put up with a lot during these past 3 years. And I'd like to go on record thanking Lois.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, there is behind every great king, there is a much stronger and better serving queen. So, and I appreciate the work that she did.
Well, I'm sure everybody thanks you, Larry, and without going through it individually, you and Lois, it's been great, and you can leave this with a job well done and be very satisfied.
Thank you.
That's all certainly true.
Thank you. Thank you. I will now move for adjournment, and we will move to questions from the community. Amanda, do we have? I got a few. Are there any more?
Yes, sir. I've emailed them to you, so you should have those in your inbox.
Okay.
But we do have several questions to address.
Okay, let me start from Lisa Howe on Greenwood bike gates. Ms. Howe is concerned that the gate on the east side of Greenwood has been broken and standing wide, and the gate on the opposite side freezes in the open position every time it rains. We appreciate, Ms. Howie, your concern, as Toby and I think Russell and Sam have indicated. We're aware of the problem. Unfortunately, I guess, Sam, those gates are just very old, and finding parts to fix them is difficult.
Well, one of them actually, Larry, is relatively new, and that one part failed, and getting a replacement part for the new gate has turned into just as much a dilemma as getting the parts for the old gate. We are going to pull out that second gate that needs to be replaced there next year, and Jared Mays will be taking over responsibility for those gates under the facilities group that we created this year. So at the end of the day, those gates need to work. They haven't been. Getting parts and getting service to them has been a challenge. If we need to do something different with them, all our gates, the two there and the one at North Sea Pines Drive next year, we'll come back to the board. The MEP committee will make a recommendation to do that. We're not satisfied with the level of service we've gotten in those gates either. We'll do our best moving ahead with them.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Howie, for bringing that to our attention. And I guess, Sam, as Toby mentioned, the security folks at the gates are watching those open gates and doing the best they can to monitor people coming in.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next question is from Vicky Gockenauer, Ray, a bench for Lawton Canal Road. She's asking whether or not we could put a bench for Lawton Canal Road, as she enjoys the serenity of walks along the canal, becoming difficult to make the same walk without a resting place. Is that something we can look into, Sam?
Absolutely. I'll work with Mr. Henderson and Jared Mays, and we'll figure out an appropriate place for that.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Gockenauer, for that comment. Next is from Susan Armstead, speeding on Governor's Road. Could you please add more 25-mile-per-hour speed limit signs on Governor's Road? There are only a couple of them, and many cars blast down the street at 50 miles an hour or more. There are many people walking, biking. Cars need to slow down, and the traffic limit needs to be enforced. Sam?
Happy to take a look at that. I think there probably is a need for an additional speed limit sign there. I do know that Toby's security folks have been spending more time on Governor's Road because that speeding is an issue on that road.
And I guess as we add staff, we'll have the ability to do more clocking of folks on that road as well.
That is correct. Yes, sir. We'll have more folks available to do that.
Great. Next is from Kathy Brainerd, the new STR fee. She's asking about the fee and the basis on which it was adopted. Ms. Brainerd, as I think we mentioned earlier, back in May, the Victoria Shanahan put together a detailed presentation which demonstrated the causal effect of the need for more security and LUM staff in light of the fact that a higher percentage of the security calls were in fact related to rental properties. Victoria, is that available on the website?
It is.
I don't believe that it is.
No, it is. Amanda, it is. Or you can go to the May meeting, the video of the May meeting, and when we adopted that fee, and it will be there as well. So I think you, Ms. Brainerd, if you go back to that information, I think the board had more than enough information to justify the basis for the fee. Then she's asking, I would assume in 2023, there will be monthly tracking reports that show the resources that were utilized due to short-term rentals versus full-time residents. Is that accurate? I assume that Toby and his staff will continue to mark down as calls are made, whether they relate to a rental or a property owner. Does that continue to be true, Victoria?
Yes, with the new software, they absolutely have the ability. I apologize, ma'am.
No, we certainly will do that, and then we'll determine with the finance committee any financial tracking associated with that as we move into the new year.
Right. And we'll determine, the next board will determine what, if any, information is needed to continue to justify the fee on a regular basis.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any comments, questions? Next is from Leanne Leahy, yesterday's safety alert. Several RPOs were confused by the safety alert issued related to the metal object found in the preserve. Many neighbors who heard the detonation didn't know what it was. Did neutralize in place create a boom sound? Perhaps without a military background, we could be more specific for what neutralize meant and the sound it created. Sam, I guess, proving once again, we tried not, I think it's fair to say, Sam, we've tried not to alarm the community that we had a bomb in the middle of the forest preserve, particularly since thanks to the security and its staff, we were doing everything humanly possible to make sure that there would be no impact beyond the actual detonation site of the bomb. And so I guess proving once again, you can't believe all the people all the time, but Ms. Leahy, we will certainly take into account the fact that we'll try to be a little bit more specific next time.
Yeah, we were working in the field, Larry, to get that email out as quickly after the neutralization of the metal objects as we could. So
then I think Ms. Leahy then goes on and says, I was wondering if the data that was shared with the finance committee and perhaps other members could be shared with the RPOs relating to the short-term rental fee. And I think, Amanda, you just indicated that it is on the website. And if you go back to the actual video of the board meeting, that's probably the best source of it because you'll hear the discussion itself, not only looking at the slides. Is that correct, Amanda?
Yes, sir. That can be found on our website in the property owners tab. And then specifically if they go to the Sea Pine CSA revenues funding resource page, that information is posted in what was provided back in May.
And it was the May 2022 meeting.
I believe so. Give me just a quick second to confirm. I'm checking one source just to confirm. Give me one moment. I'll get right back to you just to confirm
Okay.
that was the main meeting.
Yeah, again, I think I would urge folks to watch that meeting. And I think, Amanda, in your weekly newsletter, you actually identify the specific section of the video where you can hear that discussion. So they don't have
Yes,
to listen
sir.
to the entire meeting if they don't want to.
Correct. We also provide that information as a timestamped alert so they can access it very quickly. And they can also go to our meeting minute recap page on our website under the board governance page. And those recaps from each of our previous meetings are also posted on that page as well, Larry.
Great. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Leanne, for those questions. Next is a question from Bill Sullivan, a request to allow homeowners to bring and store their motorcycle into Sea Pines. Will the board please consider allowing a homeowner to bring and store their motorcycle into Sea Pines? This can be done in an easily controlled manner as it is in other communities. A homeowner could simply call security to let him know they're bringing a motorcycle in. When they want to take the motorcycle out, they can call security and tell them what time they're leaving. I think I would suggest that this be referred to the Safety and Security Committee. Bill, if you can take this, or whoever is next year's chair of that committee, take this on to their
Larry,
agenda.
we looked at this earlier in our committee and chose not to move it forward. We didn't think at this time that would be a good move for Sea Pines. Sam, you want to comment on anything additional on that?
No, so I think Gage, you looked at it as well, Gary.
We did and came to the same conclusion that it would not be appropriate. So, yes.
Well, again, I would only ask that to this gentleman if he wants to bring it back to the committees.
Thank you.
Each year the committees change, and perhaps the board will as well. So something for the board to consider next year. And thank you for that question, Mr. Sullivan. The next question is from Kirk Rocker, an owner who backs up to a golf course in Sea Pines. His question, and this is less for CSA, who is responsible for damages when a golfer hits a ball and breaks a window or sliding glass door? Two property owners have suffered broken doors in the last 60 days. What is the policy? I believe this is a matter of state law. I know in Maryland, where I was a golfer for many years, you were responsible for your golf ball. And I made sure that I tried to keep it inside the golf course area at least. But Carrie, do you know the answer to this question?
Yes, it's come up many times, and the policy is that the golfer is responsible for his errant golf ball and the damage. And the golf courses were built long before many of the homes that are bordering the golf courses, and so that we have taken the stance that the golfer is responsible.
I'm always sorry to hear that people who live on golf courses are getting golf balls into their windows as opposed to their backyards, where they can be retrieved and sold to golfers like me who can use any golf ball I can. But that is not something CSA can help you with beyond what is the law. And the last question is from Todd Schweiger. And his question is, can you explain what is the main reason for the plaintiff in the critical infrastructure litigation, or reasons are for fighting against the critical infrastructure referendum? I believe that the plaintiff has the right to file a lawsuit like anyone else in the United States does. Her motives are her own. Our job as CSA is to defend our actions as we believe we can, as we did what we did based on advice of counsel, and we continue to believe based on advice of counsel that what we did was appropriate. We also believe that if the plaintiff wants to appeal the rulings, that it is our obligation to fight that appeal. And in light of the fact that she has maintained the issue open, we've cross-appealed the negative decision on our part. I want to stress that even though we didn't agree with Judge Norton's initial ruling that we didn't have the authority to call the referendum, since we were given the authority to collect the money, we were willing to accept that result. The plaintiff filed the appeal and we cross appealed. So it is the plaintiff that's chosen to exercise her constitutional rights to use the courts to validate her concerns. I don't think it's our job to question her motives. Our job is to defend what CSA has done, and I'm very pleased with at how well we've done that. Amanda, any other questions beyond what those?
No, sir.
Well, then again, I want to thank the board for its tremendous service this year. Thank you for the work we've done, and I look forward to working with as many of you as possible next year under new leadership. And I don't want to leave without again thanking Sam Bennett and the CSA professional staff for the incredible job they do in maintaining Sea Pines as the premier community on all of Hilton Head. So with that, thank you all.